Hello everyone, it's Donna Robertson with Fabric Cafe. Welcome today, and thank you so very much, Sharon, for inviting us to do this program. I have had so much fun working with the Kaffe fabric. I have to tell you though, when I got that box of Kaffe fabric, it was like somebody giving me a box of 64 beautiful color crayons to use, and I could only use the color crayon once. So I had so much fun that I want to share it with you today because we did some fun things to share with you. Now everything is going to be based on our 3-yard quilt books. We have 7 different books in print, but every print has the same, every book has the basic same format. So I'm going to show you that. This is my latest book. It's called Quick as a Wink, 3-yard quilts. On the back, it shows all 8 patterns that are in this book. Every book is different. Every book has 8 patterns, and every pattern is written for 3 sizes. You can either make a lap quilt. The basic size is 45 by 60. Now, they do change slightly depending on how the fabric is utilized. And then we have a twin size. It uses 6 yards. And then we have a king-queen size that uses 12 yards. So you can have it your way, whichever size you would like to make. You can do that with the instructions in our 3-yard quilt books. So we are going to be using 2 of these books today with the quilts that we're going to show you. And each one of these is being shown as a lap quilt. So if you wanted to make it bigger, you can either make it with 6 yards or you can add a border. And we do have something on our website, fabriccafe.com. It is a button called Free Goodies, and on that free site we do have instructions for how you can add just 1 yard of fabric to make larger borders, a ½ yard to make larger borders, etc. So I want Hannah is my helper today, and I want her to show this particular quilt. So let's come right over here. This one is called Corner Play. And I love this. Now, this is the really cool thing. There's a specific way that I write my patterns, and I'm going to be going through this and helping you to see how easy it is to select your fabrics whenever you're putting one of the quilts together. You always get 3 positions in the pattern, and the way that it falls, you'll have your focus fabric. That's your largest print. So if you look at these 3 pieces here, this one has the largest print, so it always falls in the number 1 position. Then you're going to compare the 2 remaining fabrics, which would be this, and you're going to pick the light one for the number 2 position and the dark one for the number 3 position. Let's put that over here on the table. And how are we doing on people joining us here, Sharon? Do we need a few more minutes, or are they coming right along?
Doing good.
Everything's good. Okay. This particular pattern is in our book called Pretty Darn Quick, and that is called Corner Play. Originally, I designed this pattern for Modern Views. No, not Modern Views. The Modern Quilt magazine. I can't remember the name of it, but the Modern Quilt magazine. Several years ago, the editor asked me to do a 3-yard quilt. This particular quilt that we're looking at is the Corner Play, and this one is 45 by 63. Now, as I explained to you, they will vary in size according to the way that the fabric is utilized. Now, over here, you'll always have a black and white diagram. The black and white diagram will show you your fabric placement. So remember, as I was pointing to you, I said, okay, now your largest print is going to be your number 1 or your focus fabric. And so if we refer back to this one, here's your largest print, and that's in the number 1. And everywhere there's a number 1 fabric, it has a polka dot. And then your 2 remaining fabrics, you get to choose between which one is going to be the lightest and the darkest. So let me pull these 3 fabrics over here, because if you look at the fabrics not in the quilt, you can really see this. So if you're using this to make one of Kaffe's quilts, I like picking out that focus fabric first, the largest print. It's going to go in that number 1 spot. Then you have 2 pieces of fabric remaining. You compare these 2 for your light and your dark. And you'll see in just a little bit, we have some of the quilts made where your focus fabric is also the darkest of the three, but that does not get compared. These are the two that get compared. Your lightest is set up for a white box, so everywhere it's white in this quilt, that's going to be there. The dark one is your darkest fabric, that would be this one, and it is everywhere that the legend shows you that it's dark. So this makes a really cool, easy way for you to select your fabrics and know where to place them in your quilt. If you do want to make it larger, a twin size is 68 by 86, and a king queen is 107 by 98. Now, one thing I want to point out to you also is that in the very beginning, when we started doing 3-yard quilts, we did it out of necessity. What do they say? Mother Nature is necessity is the mother of invention. And we were trying to move some fabric in our shop, and it wasn't really going anywhere, so we came up with the great idea of making a 3-yard quilt. And we had 3 bolts each, so we took about 45 quilts to our first show. And by 2 o'clock the first day, we had sold out. And I was like, I think maybe we have something here. So my daughter and I were working together, and I said, we need to design some more quilts like this. Well, it turned out as we started designing them, people were just crazy about them. They said, well, we not only can know how much fabric to buy when we go to the shops, we know we just need 3 1-yard cuts of fabric. We know that we need a focus, a light and a dark. And so suddenly matching fabric became so much easier for them. So we started introducing new patterns, but then we also learned that they loved the fact that every pattern is written the same way. So whether you use pattern A or pattern B, you're always going to be able to use 3 1-yard cuts of fabric with the focus in the number 1 spot, the light in the number 2 spot, and the dark in the number 3 spot. So it makes it super, super easy for you to be able to quilt. So we'll take that one away. And once again, corner play that we just showed you is in our book, Pretty Darn Quick. Let me put the book down here so you can see that. Okay, we had a lot of fun with this. We actually created 9 different quilts that we're going to share with you. In this next one, we're going to show you what happens when you start moving your fabrics around or adding different fabrics to your quilt top. This one is just lovely, lovely, lovely. I really have a tendency to be a green or an aqua type person. I really like these colors together very much. And this is your focus fabric here, so that's your largest block. And then we put this as our lightest, because if you compare those two, and I tell people all the time, if you don't know for sure which one's light and which one's dark, then what you can do is just squint and you can see it. Or you can put those 2 fabrics together and take a picture, turn it to black and white, and it shows up very clearly which one's light and which one's dark. So this one is called Bold Blocks. It has a little bit of a modern look to it because it has an asymmetrical design. And I love these huge flowers. They're just so fun to work with. So let's put that one up here because I wanted to share with you that fabric, and then I want to share with you what happens if you replace one of the blocks in this, because any of the fabrics will work in any of the positions. You can switch them around if you want to. So if you wanted, you could actually put the number 2 fabric in the focus fabric area if that's what you preferred, because every position uses 1 yard of fabric. So it really can lean to your own creative bent if you want to do something a little different. And Sharon and I were talking the other day, and we were talking about how this is Kaif's definition, or his version of a stripe. A lot of people are afraid of stripes. I use stripes a lot because I think they add a lot of motion to your quilt. And I especially love to use them in a border position so that whenever you use them, they give you a striped effect on the border. So if we stay with our same basic concept that your large fabric is in your number 1 position, then your number 2 you compare these two, light and dark. That goes in your number 2, and then here is your number 3 in your background. So you're probably beginning to see and understand basically what we're talking about. This one is also from the Pretty Darn Quick book. Now, we have something that our customers know that I'm going to be talking about, pieces and parts. It's going to be where I took other fabrics and I just changed them around. So this is a pretty bright quilt, but what would happen if we just changed one of the fabrics out with something else? And what I did was I went through and I took this color. See how this is the brown and the purple back here? I just thought that was really cool. But let's just change this out so that we replace the number 2 fabric with this. And then we have a cropping tool that John made for me so that I could, oh, I have this scooted over too far, sorry. There we go. And we're going to crop that out so you can see that block. And look how it changes that block. I think the thing about 3-yard quilts that has helped people the most is being able to see how you can use your own creativity and really change the look of it just by adding your 2 cents worth in what you would like to be there. Or I know we've taught many classes where everybody in the class uses the same pattern, but they all bring 3 different fabrics. So you get a lot of creativity going on. And I know in the beginning, whenever we first started our company 20 years ago, one of the most frequent things that I heard from customers was, I don't know how to match fabric. And so this simplifies it to the point where you can actually you can start matching up fabric and you can try it. The only way that you'll ever really perfect it is when you do it over and over again. Okay, so let's look at these 3 fabrics up close. Or did we do that already? Where I pulled my fabrics back so you could see them again. But I love the way that changed just by putting this darker color in replacement. It kind of grounded the quilt a little bit more. Okay.
Let's go back to Sharon.
Sharon, did you have some comments? Did she have a... Okay.
Do you fussy cut the fabric?
Do I fussy cut? No, I do
blocks.
not. Okay, thank you. That's a good question. Do I fussy cut fabric? No, I do not fussy cut the fabric. Let's put that quilt back up here and I'll show you. We do a lot of strip piecing. Almost everything that we do is strip pieced. So let's pull this out and you can see when you look at these blocks that they're all different. There's no fussy cutting going on here at all. And this particular one, the way that I made this quilt is you cut the big block. Well, actually, you don't cut a big block. You cut a big strip that's 10.5 inches tall and then in the width of the fabric. And then you're going to take strips of fabric and sew those to this block. So that strip is sewn to this block. And then you cut your unit. So if you're looking at my patterns, let me pull that up and show you in the actual pattern. So we actually cut what we call units. So here's your unit right here. So it has one strip cut on one end. Then you add another strip to that. So this is all sewn in long strips. And so you're not going to be fussy cutting, but look how gorgeous case fabric turns out. It just works. One of the reasons I do a lot of 10-inch blocks is because many fabrics are based on 8, 10, or 12-inch repeat. I believe that's what it is. It's 8 and 12, 6, 8, and 12. Whenever I first got his thumbnails to work with, I was surprised at how large his repeats were. You would very seldom ever do a quilt with the full width of that repeat. but it would work when you cut it into the 10-inch blocks like that. But they are strip pieced. The size of the quilts are basically 45 by 60. You're going to give or take an inch or two either way. So if I took the Pretty Darn Quick book, I can quickly show you how they'll change slightly, but they're going to be pretty much the same size. Here's a 43 by 58. The smaller your blocks, the smaller the quilt, because you've got a lot more fabric going into your seam allowances. So that one is 43 by 58. This one's 47 by 60. And then the one that I showed you first with the corner play, this particular one is 45 by 63. So they're all in that basic area just for the lap quilt. And it makes everything that you see on the front: your borders, your binding, and your quilt top. However, when I first started this program, we were presenting them as a little bit of an economy quilt. And the reason we did that is because it was 2008 when we came out with our very first pattern, and cotton prices were just beginning to soar. We were used to paying a certain amount, and we were watching those prices go up every time we ordered. And I'm a small shop, and I was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And then I went, well, wait a minute. Originally, quilting was an economy craft. If you look at the old patterns, every block, many blocks were patched. There were a lot of pieces and parts. Old clothing was used, and it was more of a necessity. And then it became an art where we bought yards and yards and yards of fabric and put them together in beautiful quilts, and I have nothing against that. But in 2008, I was getting scared because I was a quilt shop, and my prices were going from about $8 a yard up to about $12 a yard. So I was thinking, can people even afford to do quilting? Well, yes, we can, because we are artists and we love to do quilting. So I created a pattern, and everything in that quilt top, binding, and border is done with 3 yards. But my binding is a single fold binding. If you want a double fold binding, you do have to add a half of a yard. Now, let's look at that single fold binding on this quilt. Here's the next one. This one is Porch Rails. Step up just a little bit. Okay, right here. It's a very dainty binding. I have tutorials on how to do it, and I did choose to do this one with still pictures. This tutorial is still pictures, because then you don't have to wonder what it was I did. I took lots and lots of pictures. I should have had a picture of me sitting with the tripod in my lap while I sewed, because that was a funny little scene whenever I did it. But I would sew a little bit and I'd take a picture. I'd sew, and the tripod was right across my lap. But this is what the binding looks like. And if you don't want the single fold binding, then you can do a half yard more and get a double fold binding. Any other? Okay, this one is called Porch Rails. And when I designed this one, I was looking for something that would be super simple and very, very fast. I listened to my customers. Many of my designs have come about because the customer said, that's too pretty to cut up, so I made bigger blocks. But they also wanted really quick and easy quilts that they could put together in a hurry for a gift quilt or a charity quilt or something like that. So I came up with this one, and I called it Porch Rails. I'm always telling the funny stories about how I have to name all of these quilts. I've designed more than 100 quilts, and therefore I say I have over 100 children that I had to name. But this one has a very simple 8-inch block, and then it has the rail fence block. And it is super simple, and it's just alternated. So you have a rail fence, and you have a block, and a rail fence, and a block, and then we turn them. And whenever I finished designing it, I said, well, maybe this is the porch and these are the rails. I like to sit out on my porch a lot. So I called it Porch Rails. So that's how I came up with the name of this one. It's a super simple quilt. I'll give you the sizes on each one of them as we go. And she's going to put that one up there so we can look at the fabrics. And let me find Porch Rails. Porch Rails is 45.5 by 60.5. And this is a good example of the strip piecing, because I will sew 3 pieces together. We then cut it into blocks, And then we just alternated this block with a solid block. So super simple and fast. Now this one has a little bit unusual border on it. So let me scoot it over a little bit. I did an inset in the border. And I have to confess, one of the reasons I did the inset on the border is because I was running out of the border fabric and I needed to extend it. So I did some inset blocks. If these are economy quilts, we're going to use most of the fabric. I designed for 34 inches of the 36 inches. So you're going to have a little bit to trim up if you need to trim up. If you pre-wash, please be sure you zigzag your raw edges before you wash it, or you'll lose a lot through raveling, and that's no fun. So I designed this specifically because I needed more on my border, and it turned out that people love it. And I do too. It just kind of adds a little bit more interest to your quilt to have that inset block. And here are your instructions for how to do that. So whenever you're working with my patterns, I try to give you plenty of diagrams, and people like it. The customers like these and have told me that they like it because they always know how much fabric to buy. If you want to make a larger one, you just buy 2 yards of each one. But they also tell me they go together so fast and they still look interesting. One of my favorite stories is being at a quilt show, and about 5 o'clock one day, a lady came in and bought 4 or 5 kits. She'd never made my quilts, but she really fell in love with the ones we were showing. She went home. Well, she didn't go home. She went to her hotel. And of course, if you're an avid quilter, you travel with a sewing machine. And she said, I had nothing else to do, so I cut out the pattern. And then I went and had nothing else to do, so I sewed the pattern. And the next morning at 10 o'clock when we opened, she came in and she said, I want you to see what I did in just a little over 3 hours. And I actually have a video on my site, the 3-hour quilt, because she was Speedy Gonzalez, but she was able to make the quilt top in just 3 hours. They go together so fast. So that's just one more reason to like 3-yard quilts, because, you know, really, you just want to quilt. You just want to sew. Okay, here are the 3 fabrics, so you can see these up close, and you can also see, isn't this gorgeous? These are feathers. We had a lot of fun with the feathers. We have 2 or 3 quilts that have the feathers. So this is your focus fabric. This is your, you compare these two, and you'll come up with which one you like best for light or dark, or as I said, you can switch any position. And in this particular case, because I chose this feather in the blue is actually darker if you squint than the red. But I wanted the red up against that. So I simply switched it, made a note, and I said I want the blue in the number 2 and the red in the number 3. So don't hesitate to do that, but do make yourself a note so you know what you've done and you put the pieces in the right spots. So we have fabric 1, fabric 2, and fabric 3. This one is called Porch Rails. It's out of the Pretty Darn Quick book. Whoops, sorry. And I think, yes, and that's the last one that we're showing you from this book. So once again, this is Pretty Darn Quick. And please stay tuned because we have a surprise for you at the end of the show. So these are the 8 quilts that are in this particular book. Okay, the next quilts that we're showing you are out of this book called Easy Peasy 3-yard quilts. And this one is another one that came about by request. Somebody said, I have this gorgeous fabric that I want to show off, but I don't exactly want to cut it all up, so what do I do? So this particular one's called Sweet Times, and I used big 10-inch blocks. These are all from the Kaffe 1-yard fabric. So I got all of those blocks out of the fabric, and then I just border each one. So each one, alternating one, is bordered by the same colors, or by different colors. And this one turns out really a nice size too. Let's put that one up here, and we will show you some pieces and parts on this too. Like I said, when I got the fabric, it was kind of hard to decide which ones I really wanted to use. Let's do this way, a little bit more. because they were all so pretty. And I just really wanted to use them all, but I just had to quit. Okay, so we're going to look at what you laughing about.
What you're saying.
Okay, well, I'm sure there's at least one other person out there that feels that way too. When you get new fabric, it's like, I want to do it all, but I want it all right now. Okay, so here's Sweet Times, and here's another example of that strip piecing. And here's the example of the fabric 1, fabric 2, and fabric 3. You just look at your black and white diagram, so simple and easy to read. And as I explained, I used all the big blocks are made with the number 1 fabric, and then the white is your number 2 fabric, and the black is your number 3. So if you look at this, this is your number 2, and this is your number 3. And then whenever you're reading the pattern, here's your cutting instructions, and it tells you exactly what to cut from each one of those fabrics. So from fabric 1, this is what you cut, etc., etc. Okay, so because I couldn't decide exactly, we decided to show you what it would look like if we replaced just one of the fabrics. Isn't that gorgeous? Love it. So we're going to put this, and this is not fussy cut. This is just cut one right after the other, And I only replaced the focus fabric. So you do not, this is your block here. And then this is your, I'm running off the table there, here. And let's put these down here. I need to be just a little bit taller. Thank you, Hannah. So here is what your quilt would look like if you just replaced your focus fabric. The Kaffe fabrics are so much fun to use because of the way the colors work together, and they add just the right amount of pop. And when you put different ones together, I do like contrast. And so I do work with that contrast part of the fabrics as well, but just a work of art. Okay. We have a question?
Yeah, Theodora.
Hi,
Who messages
Theodora.
quite often. She wants to know if we will actually get the fabric in to make these kits in February.
We have it on order, and we are just ready for February to be here. Absolutely. Okay. Well, let me tell you the really amazing thing about Diane Arthur. We met in 2008, and she came into our booth, and she told us that she was making charity quilts, and I believe that she goes on 2 or 3 retreats every year, and she makes like 13 or 14 quilts every time. It is amazing. That's right. As Diane just said, I have another story about that. I was at a show one time, and this lady came in, and she said, "Oh my gosh, I just discovered your books last week." And she said, "I was at a retreat, and I sat down and started my quilt, and I looked over to my left, and this woman was making this really pretty little quilt. And I was sewing, and then I looked over, and she was working on another quilt. And I said, 'What happened to the first quilt?' She said, 'Well, I'm finished.' And she said, and a few minutes later, I looked over there, and I mean, it was like an hour or two. She said, she was working on a third quilt, and I'm still on my first quilt." So they're great for retreats. You cut all your pieces, take them with you, and then you can be the star of the retreat. Well, that's great. I'm so happy to hear that people are excited about them. Awesome. Well, let's look at this up a little bit closer. I like to show them up close because it's so much fun to see them. So there's your focus. Here's your number 2 and your number 3. And I love the way the flowers showed up on that quilt. Hannah, could you bring us that quilt again? Because the way they almost look like a little half what am I trying to say? Like a
Scallop.
scallop. Yeah. So I like the way that turned out. Okay. So the next quilt, I've been showing these bright, bright, bright colors. But now there are some people that are watching that might enjoy something a little bit more earth tone. So we'll look at this one. This one is just a fun one. I fell in love with these autumn colors. Autumn is one of my favorite times of the year. We live out in the middle of the woods, and you crunch through the leaves, and you've just got that crispness in the air. And so I love autumn, and this just reminded me of autumn so very much. So this one, if you'll look at this, you can see that it's a much darker quilt because of the way the fabrics are placed. So you've got, once again, no fussy cutting. You've got your big block, but then we made some small blocks with the same focus fabric and alternated it here. Now I'm going to show you the blocks on these because they kind of disappear. You look at that and you go, now how did you do that? So let's lay that one up here and let me show you how these blocks are put together. That's always fun to see as well. So one of them, and this one is called Easy Street. So the story behind this one is that I was designing the book Easy Peasy, and I did a pattern, and it was not easy peasy. I am known for writing easy directions, and if I'm starting to write and it's getting complicated, I just stop, and sometimes I will rewrite a pattern 3 or 4 times before I'm happy with the way the instructions are written. I mean, the quilt's already made, but I want you to be able to make it and make it easy. So I ditched that pattern, and I needed another quilt because these needed to go because we needed the book finished. So I sat down, I started designing, and I designed this one, and I wrote this one, and I thought, man, that was like being on Easy Street. So that was the name that it got. It went together very, very quickly. So if you look at this one, we are going to, I'm going to have to pull it just a little bit closer so I can actually see what I'm doing here. Okay, this is like almost like a 4-patch. So if you look at this using the cropping tool like this, then, do I have that right? Nope. Let's move it down just a little bit here and there. Okay, those colors kind of move together so much that those buttons, I love those buttons. Here's your 2 blocks. You've got this block right here. Oh, let's scoot it in a little bit more. Okay, you make 2 of these. So see, it's just a 2-sided block. And there's one here, and then there's one up here. Here's the other one. And you put them together, and they just kind of kiss in the corner. And then you've got these 2 blocks made with the opposite fabric, and there's your points going away. So you got 2 points coming in, 2 points going out. This was a super simple 4-patch to put together. And then you've got your big block, and it's over here. So we've got right here, and that's your big block. And then when you put those together, the way they butt up against each other just gives you this awesome look like you've done some kind of more complicated piecing there. But super, super simple to put together. Okay, here's the fabric. And once again, like I said, I love using a stripe in the border. So we're using his version of the stripe. So we've got our focus fabric is the number 1 fabric. And then you've got your stripe and these awesome buttons. You'll see before the end of the show, I fell in love with his buttons, and I've used them in a couple of more quilts as well in different colors. But just so much fun. And I love the way he puts a little pop of color, almost like a surprise color in there. But that just tied together really well with the little pops of color in this. So I really like the way that one turned out. This one is called Easy Street from the Easy Peasy book. Now, I've got this one in a totally different colorway in here. It's all in reds and blacks. But here's your diagram in the black and white. Here's your strip piecing. And like I said, we will strip piece, and then I have you to cut the pieces into assembly units. And then those units are then you go on and get more instructions for finishing out the quilt. And don't forget, you get a twin and a king queen in there as well. So this one is called Easy Street. Okay, now this one, to me, this is a stunning quilt. Look at this, isn't that gorgeous? Gorgeous, gorgeous. Now the feathers are so colorful, they are just incredible. And so we've got our feathers, and this one is using alternating colors. So you've got a block, you've got 2 focus fabrics. And if you fall in love with Kaffe fabric and you want to use lots of these great brights, the best way, in my opinion, to really set them off is to give them a sashing that separates them, but still showcase the fabric. I just think that's gorgeous. So let's put that one on the table. This one's called Tic Tac. And I've got pieces and parts for Tic Tac too. Okay. So here's our fabric. Thank you. Here's our fabric for Tic Tac. And like I said, you've got your focus fabric. Even though they're identical, I put this in your number 1 spot. And then I put the lighter one in the number 2 spot. You compare these two, and you've got your lights and your dark. So you can see those very easily over here with your number 1 fabric and your number 2 fabric with that black in the middle. Now let's take it a little bit different route. This was one of the other fabrics that I really wanted to make a quilt out of this because I thought it was so cool. But at the same time, I had to choose. So once I chose, I just decided I would have to live with it. And I'm showing you this instead. So this, you want to put that one down there for me, Hannah? Thank you. Mm-hmm. So this is your, look how this is switching out. It's just going to change the look of the quilt completely. So if you like less contrast, meaning bright, you can go ahead and put that together with some of the more subdued colors. You want to put that one up there for me? You know, one of the drawbacks of being 5 foot tall is you can't quite reach across a 4-foot table. There we go. Now, can you get a good idea of that? Let's cover up the bright stuff over here so you can see it. Isn't that great? It just gives it a totally different look with this particular quilt. You could still use that black. And see, this would be a good one for somebody that doesn't, you know, they maybe have a little bit more muted, but they like the art. Look great on a leather sofa. Mm-hmm. It would look really great on a leather sofa. Okay, so this one is called, the pattern is called Tic Tac. And as we know, it's some more of the gorgeous Kaffe fabrics. Okay, we'll take that one away. And the next quilt, this one's called Town Square. Now this one's been very, very popular because of the way this particular block it just kind of almost like coming towards you, sitting on top. It's called Town Square. And on this one, I liked really setting these off. It's bright, but it's a very coordinated quilt for me. With those blues and greens. And I warned you up front, I like blue and green. So we'll pull that one over, and I've got pieces and parts on this one too. I'm going to show you a little bit different, a little bit different look too. It's always fun to see different ways that you can put the fabrics together. So this one is called Town Square, and this is your focus fabric. And then the 2 fabrics that are remaining are your light and your dark. Love that. That's gorgeous. Okay, let's put some pieces and parts on it and see it a little bit different. So because I like the feathers so much, I decided to put some feathers in this one. And John, which one would be better? Down at the bottom? I'm going to scoot you up here a little bit.
No problem.
All right. And by the way, John is behind the camera doing all of this. Isn't that fun? I mean, and it looks great with those green and that blue. So those feathers are just awesome. So that's another look for you. Okay, earlier you had a question. Are you doing any new books? Yes, I am. Tomorrow I leave to go to San Antonio where I work with my daughter. She used to be here. She helped me found the company 20 years ago, but she's been transferred down to the San Antonio area. She is actually working on a book of fat quarters. So we will be introducing 3 yards of fat quarters, and that would be 12 fat quarters. That one will be produced. It should be out somewhere between the end of November and the first of the year. And then I am working on a quilt as well, a book as well, another 3-yard quilt book. And we're going to show you, sneak peek, 2 of the quilts that will be in the new book. So these patterns are written. We have made 2 of the models. This one is called Big Blooms. And when I saw the Kaffe fabric, I thought it would be so fun to use big blooms from Kaffe's fabric to make my big flowers on this quilt. So that's what I did here. And I really, really like that. And I do love this. I think it's called Moss Rose, this particular fabric. And I really like it as well. But I love the way it just, this pink kind of picks up the little bit of pink that's in the fabrics. So this one will be in my next book. The next book is called Quilts in a Jiffy. And it will be out probably more like the 1st of January. All right, let's look at these fabrics. They're gorgeous too. So this one is Big Blooms, Quilts in a Jiffy, and it's coming out by the 1st of the year. So beautiful, beautiful. Speaks volumes, doesn't it? And then I used my contrasting, my number 1, and my number 2. I mean, my number 3. I didn't say those right. Okay, I've forgotten how to count, so sorry. Focus fabric 2 and 3. We were laughing earlier. I was cutting pieces, and I told Jessica, I said, now you'll be able to tell everybody that I know how to count to 10, because I do believe in count twice, or sometimes 4 times before I use that rotary cutter. So let's just show you the blocks here so that you can see those as well, because it's a little bit different. And this is the big bloom right here and right there. So you can see how that's put together. This is all from the same fabric, and then this corners are a little different. So they just blend in with this so that it looks like you've got a fancy little block going over in the background. Just a fun quilt. All right.
And the other block's a 4-patch.
Oh, well, I didn't show that, did I?
Yeah.
Everybody knows a 4-patch. Thank you, John. See, John knows a 4-patch. I'll put that on there as well. Okay. Oops. I do know how to use this little cropping tool that John made for me. And there's the other block. Now, you talk about super simple. See how super simple that is? Okay. Thank you, John. All right. Now, the other one that we're going to show you... Hannah's over here playing with me. She's pulling the quilt away. She's not sure I'm finished with it. I might think of one more thing to say. Okay, this next quilt is also from the new book. And I told you I used buttons again. This is the fun story about this one. Whenever I designed this quilt, I had already designed the quilt when I got the fabric from Sharon. And whenever I saw it and I showed her the quilt, oh, excuse me. I had named it Button Box because I thought these looked like buttons with the little holes in the middle. And I had already named the pattern Button Box whenever I designed it. And then I got this fabric and I went, it's perfect. So it's got this big, gorgeous fabric here. And then we've got buttons and buttons. Cute, cute, cute. So I loved the synchronicity of that one. I'm serious. It probably wasn't 2 days before I got the fabric. Whenever I got, that I'd finished the pattern when I got the fabric. All right. So here are our 3 fabrics. So here's the focus fabric. Now you need to really scan that one. This one is just, look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? Just gorgeous. So that is the focus fabric. And then we have our fabric 2 and our fabric 3. This one is called Button Box, and it too will be in the new book called Quilts in a Jiffy, and it should be out by the end of the year. No. Quite often, I think in the past more than now, you had pre-washers. When I first started sewing, I would walk in the back door through my laundry room. I would open the washer and I'd put my fabric in and wash it, because that's the way I was instructed to do whenever I started quilting. But then you had to trim off any raveled, strings and everything, and then resize the fabric in order to cut it out and create your quilt. And I finally decided that was a little more work than I wanted to do, and so I don't pre-wash mine now. I hope nobody hangs up at this point, but I don't pre-wash my fabric. Instead, what I do is I use Synthropol or Retain when I wash a quilt. I use cold water. I set my timer so that as soon as it is through washing, I go take it out, so it's not sitting up against each other and there's no chance of it bleeding. Because the Synthropol and the Retain will catch the free radical colors. We don't usually take pre-orders, but we'll do a lot of drum rolls and announcements. We do twice a week, we do a video and we show the new fabrics that have arrived and we match them up with patterns. We do a lot of what we just showed you today, where we will change out the fabric and lay it on top of the quilt. And you can better believe that we are going to be doing quite a few programs, because I did order all 9 quilts that we showed today. I have already ordered quite a bit of that, because I know that our customers are going to love it. We do have a couple of things that we recommend if you will sign up for our newsletter at fabriccafe.com. Or if you want to go to our YouTube channel, you can watch the videos that we do, which is basically show and tell for colors and the way that I place the colors in a quilt, and show you what we have new. We have the free goodies button, and on the free goodies button, you can download things like how to cut your backings, and we actually have one that explains how to take 108 backing and make backing for 2 different quilts, because you can buy 2 yards, cut it in half, and it'll do 2 of our quilts. Yeah. Well, it saves you a lot of money, because it's, yeah. But those instructions are on our free goodies buttons. We've got several things. And if you want to try one of our free patterns, we do have a 3-yard, well, we have 2 this month. We have a pink ribbon quilt, and then we have one called Sew Fast. And they can just download it and give it a try. Oh, that'll be great. And I will say thank you to my staff, because they are awesome. Hannah, John, and Jessica. And we hope to see you again. Bye.